Hello, my wonderful gurus. We are moving on swiftly on into the second module of the program now. So we are now at the message, which is ultimately our source of impact and influence. So that's really what this whole section is about, impact and influence. And so where the messenger was all about you and understanding who you are as a person, we're going to be moving on into the section where we start to understand a lot more about this idea of impact and influence. So when you think about impact, a lot of people use these words interchangeably, but for me, they're not. And certainly, when you look at the etymology of both words, you can see that they're distinctly different. So impact is about changing what and how people think and feel. So whenever you're being impactful, people are thinking differently, and people are starting to feel different thoughts, think different thoughts and feel different feelings than they were before you came into their life. That's impact. When we talk about influence, it comes from influere, right? Kind of the Latin influere, right? So it means to be in flow. In other words, we change how people flow, we change how they behave, and we change what they do. So to be impactful is to create a kind of a mark on how they are thinking and how they're feeling. To be influential is to change how people behave and to change what they do, right? And obviously, I'm using the word change here, but ultimately we're looking to transform both. But change is the first steps of transformation, and impact and influence are the first steps of change, right? So you think about it, you probably won't change what you're doing until you change how you think, right? You go, okay, well, I need to think a different thought in order to feel a different feeling, and now I'm thinking and feeling slightly differently, and because of that, I'm now willing to go and try and change something else about what I'm actually doing, right, functionally in my life, right? So again, we've been talking about kind of this idea of intellectual versus functional. Well, you could say impact is very intellectual, but it also includes feelings. It's much more on an intellectual level. People are listening to you and they're saying, wow, that person's they're really making me think, and they're really making me approach something in a different way. But people can think things all they want, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll take the next step and that they'll actually be influenced by you, that you will change the flow of their lives and actually get them to do something, or not get them to do, but have them behave differently. Okay, so we're really interested in both of those aspects, and really, when you think about being a guru, that's what we're talking about: bringing the light to what people think and feel, and bringing the light to how people are behaving and what they're actually doing. Okay, that's really where the focus is. And when you think about it further, if we're talking about from a business perspective, what a business is more than anything else. Like, you can think about as something that makes money, something that delivers this, it's a service, actually what a business really is a vehicle for a message. It's a vehicle for a message. If a business doesn't have, I'm talking about a service business here, because obviously if you're selling commodities, then it's coal and sugar and all that kind of stuff, right? But when we're talking about a service-based business, what the service really is a message, and it's an idea, it's a concept that is going to create impact and create influence and change how people behave, and as a result of changing how they behave, change the results that they're getting. In other words, the process that they're engaged in is going to lead to progress, which is going to lead to success, and so on and so forth. A business is a vehicle for message, but when you really think about it, so is a life. A really well-lived life is a vehicle for a message. It's saying, okay, I'm living very rich quality of life because I have this message, and whether the message is externally broadcast to other people or it's internally broadcast to ourselves, the quality of our life is governed by the quality and the depth and the definition and the refinement and the alignment of our message, okay? So bear that in mind, and also bear in mind that many people are driving empty vehicles. So, you think about if a business is a vehicle for a message, you soon come to see that so many people don't really have a message. What they have are sales scripts, and they have elevator pitches, and they have taglines, and they have kind of all these little throwaway concepts, which when you kind of nail them down and ask them what that means, most of them can't really say. And those that can, I'm certainly not going to say that everyone has trite little messages. I wouldn't be that judgmental, but many of them don't really have much depth to what they're saying, or it's so niche specific, like it's only there to serve a certain market. And then when you say, well, that's great, but like, what does that mean to the rest of your life? I go, oh, well, I've got different messages for different parts of my life. And what I'm about to share with you here is actually a way that you can have a single core, essential message that runs through your life, and that can be the wellspring of messages that then feed areas like your various niches and different markets you serve and different products and all the rest of it. So if I think about mine, like you don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free. That is my personal life message. Like that's like I point that inwardly at myself. Like when I'm struggling, Dax, what are you getting caught up in this other stuff for? You don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free. You've just got to be all that you are. Okay, am I being all that I am? No, I'm not, right? But it's the same message that I put to the GuRu project. It's the same message that I put to my other tribe, the Light, or to the Enlightened coaches. It's the same message that I put to the people that are signing up into Mind Map Mastery. It's the same message that I put to, you name it, like when I'm one-to-one coaching, it's the same message that drives everything. When I'm teaching and sharing with my children, it's the same message. It's, like it runs through everything. And then, of course, there are sub-permutations that branch off of that, but they're essentially basically feeding the same core essential message. So imagine that. Imagine if you go through life from this point forward and you say, like I have one message that can be expressed in 10 different ways versus I have 10 different messages and I don't know when to say them. The beauty of this is that once you have a message that can be expressed cleanly, clearly, powerfully, authentically, something that is truly you, it's both, it's not just descriptive, it's prescriptive, as in when you use the message, life gets better, and it gets better for you, but it gets better for everyone around you. Okay, so that's what we're aiming at here. We're aiming at creating what I call the core essential message. It's core, as in it comes from your heart and it actually sits at the center of who you are. It's essential. It is actually of your essence. It comes from you, deeply from you, as opposed to trying to shape a message to the market. And it's also essential because without it, things don't work. And it's your message, right? Core essential message. That's what we're working to in this particular module. Okay, so when you think about it, a message is what gives meaning to things. Without a message is just another way of saying kind of placing a definition into something, right? A powerful, beautiful definition, proposition about what things could be and how they could be and all that kind of stuff. But it's what gives meaning to things. So the message we'll be working to create during this module will be deeply meaningful, first and foremost to you. And so as we approach this work, I don't want you to be approaching it from the perspective of, yeah, but will the market like that? I'm sure this is like the first module where the rubber meets the road. So where the last one was all about you and you're kind of thinking, well, this is nobody else's business but mine. Because you're starting to think about what you're going to be saying to the world, there's a natural tendency for you to say, yeah, but they won't like that and they won't listen to me and that won't sell and I've tried saying that before. And what I want to invite you to do is get rid of all of that thinking at the moment and just answer the fucking question. And the question is, like, literally answer the questions that I'm asking you as we go through, not do you think the market will like this? Because I can promise you, at no stage during this module will I be asking you that question. At no stage during this module will I be asking, do you think the market will like it? Does that match your niche? Do you think, have you tried this before? How have people respond? That is not going to be any of the questions that I ask during this module. We've got far later on, we will be figuring out how to match your message to the if you want to call it that, the real world. But for now, that's not the question you're being asked. So the questions you're being asked is about creating a message that is deeply meaningful to you. Okay? So it's going to be deeply meaningful, which is one component of a truly powerful message. And the second component is that it's timeless. Like, you're not going to have to change it in a year or two. But you might want to, like you might find a different iteration of the message and say, well, you know what, I'm saying roughly the same as I was saying before, but I've found a more beautiful way to express it now, or a more powerful way to express it, and I'll do that. But ultimately, the core essence of the message will be timeless, right? And just think about how that's going to relieve you of all that wasted time, effort, energy that you've maybe kind of expressed over the years of trying to figure out, well, what do I say and how do I say and is it the right thing? Once you've done this, you're going to have a timeless message, and it's going to be universal. It's going to be applicable everywhere you take it, right? So those are the two primary components of what we're working toward. So just to be clear, this module isn't about taglines, and it's not about elevator pitches or pithy throwaway statements or all that marketing stuff, right? It's not about that. We're not trying to make things sound cool. And in fact, as we first go through it, as we're developing the first iterations of your message, I invite you not to try and make anything sound cool. Just say roughly what you're thinking at the time in the roughest, coarsest words that you can come up with, right? And even if you preface it by, I'm not exactly sure how I want to say it, but I'm pretty much trying to say this, right? So don't try to polish. There's I've been very fortunate over the years to work with a lot of editors and publishers at magazines, because I've been in quite a few of them. And when I met them and I've asked them about kind of creating content for them, they said, look, the biggest mistake we see is that people try and wear both their journalistic hat and their editorial hat at the same time. And of course, the editor is always arguing with the journalist, saying this could be better and change that and change this. And that's fine, there's a place for that, but not while you're creating. So what I'm going to invite you to do is allow yourself to say roughly what you're trying to say, but in unpolished words. Okay, allow yourself the right to basically throw the rough stuff, all right? Kind of, I always say, an expression I use is that you have to move a lot of coal to find your diamonds. Allow yourself during this module to create a lot of coal, okay? Because I promise you, by the time the module ends, there will be a hell of a lot of diamonds there, or at least the ones that come up will be some of the most valuable diamonds you've ever seen in your life. I promise you that. Okay, so just to put you at your ease, like, this stuff can be used in those ways, right? You can then, once you get your core essential message, you can create like pithy and taglines and all that kind of stuff. But this is about creating something much more important than that. It's about creating something deeply significant, meaningful, and timeless, as I've said. So how we're going to get there? This is the route we're taking for this module. So whenever you really think about it, all great messages have two vital ingredients. So it doesn't matter whether they're religious messages, whether they've been philosophers, whether they've been kind of great statesmen, you know, kind of everyone from the Buddha to Jesus to Gandhi to you name it, right? Their messages, or the powerful messengers, have delivered their messages with two vital ingredients. There's a core philosophy, right? There's a core philosophy that overarches everything, right? So for example, when I talk about the core philosophy, I'm actually saying to you, you don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free. You've just got to be all that you are. Well, that's a philosophy. It's a promise. It's a storyline that kind of overarches everything. But I'm not actually telling you how to get there, right? It's a philosophy. And you'll sit there and you'll either agree with it or disagree with it. But, you know, I've been very fortunate. Most people actually, you know, when they hear that, they're not quite sure how it's true, but they sense that it's true. Okay? Again, timeless wisdom and deeply meaningful, right? So a core philosophy. And the second part is that they're based upon principles. So, for example, you don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free. You just got to be all that you are. And then the principles that I'm using to guide you to that reality, that actually underpin and support that premise and that promise, is what you are experiencing in the GuRu project, right? Kind of, you know, strengthen the messenger, deliver a core, a clear, concise, powerful, timeless, deeply meaningful message, and so on and so forth, right? These are the principles. These are so the steps that you go through during the GuRu project are the principles that bear witness to and qualify the philosophy. So I'm hoping that makes sense, right? So we've got principles and we've got philosophies. And so by the time you get to the end of this module, you will have both a core essential philosophy that overarches everything, and then the principles that underpin it and hold it up. How's that sound? That's pretty powerful, right? And in turn, those things themselves are born of several different stories. In other words, there are 5 stories. There's a story of the struggle. So kind of, you know, how you got to come up with the ideas and the thoughts and the processes that you've come up with. There's the story of the search, like the actual process and progress that you made. There's the story of the solution. Kind of the solution is the actual kind of practical do this, do this, do this. There's the story of the system, how it's all put together and how it's, you know, what its syntax and sequence is and the strategy that underpins it. And then there's the story of the success, kind of what actually comes out of the other end of it. So we're going to be spending time creating these kind of various elements, right? So we're going to look at each one of the stories, and we're going to look at the philosophies, and we're going to look at the principles, right? So by the end of this module, you're going to have a great deal of clarity. And this module is going to take around about 2 weeks. Okay, just so that you're clear, it's a little bit less. It's about a week and 5 days, but it's going to take close to 2 weeks. So just understand that, and it's going to be very, very similar to the process that you went through to become the messenger that you're now stepping into. Right, it's a very, very similar process. We're going to go what I call round the houses to arrive probably back at the place where you started and sharing almost what you already believe and want to say right now. Okay, in much the same way as when we did the work of the messenger, you went around the houses and came all the way back to, yeah, my beliefs are roughly this and my values are roughly that, and they're kind of the same, but actually there's something different about them. They're more concrete and they're more established, and I've got more certainty and a far less doubt, and I'm able to express them, and I feel like I've gone from having them as intellectual beliefs to being functional. Well, instead of this being an intellectual message, this is going to be a very functional, this is going to be a lived message for you by the time you get to the end of this. Okay, so we will be going around the houses, and so some of the same kind of feelings that maybe you felt, like he's asking me this again, and isn't that like the one in the last exercise? And yes, the answer will be yes. Absolutely. It's absolutely pre-planned that you will be asked many of the same questions or very similar questions, but in slightly different ways, so that you come up with subtly different answers that give you a much more complete picture of what you're trying to say, which means that by the time you get to the end of this module, you'll have a philosophy, principles, various stories. You'll have the ability to speak about your message from lots and lots of different perspectives, lots of different angles, and in a way that is deeply meaningful, timeless, powerful. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that's got you excited about what's coming next. But look, it's important, it's vital even in taking this intellectual concept of a message and making it something truly important and integral to who you are, right? So that's why we're going around the houses so much. It's vital. We've got to kind of take this away from being a baseline idea, a baseline concept, or a kind of a one-page entry in a journal like you've done on so many marketing courses and stuff in the past, to actually really embedding this. This becomes part of who you are. It's not just something you say. Your message, we're trying to turn this message into a lived version of you, and I'm hoping that you can see, like, even though I'm far from perfect, and I don't ever claim to be, but you don't have to be more than you are to be happy, successful, and free. You've just got to be all that you are. I'm hoping you see that that's a lived belief of mine. It's not just a marketing phrase, and it's something that informs and directs all of my actions and all of my thoughts and my beliefs and my values and my showing up words, and everything else is embedded into that message, heart and soul. And it's that actually enables me to both show up powerfully and impactfully and influentially, but also showing up without having to worry about doing most of the marketing stuff that most other people do. I just share the message. Okay, so that's where we're working toward. Because look, here's what I've observed to be true. If you're not ready to speak what's important to you, then you probably aren't ready to receive what's important to you either. So that again, if you aren't ready to speak what's important to you, you probably aren't ready to receive what's important to you either. And there are many people holding back on what they really feel is important because they think that other people aren't, they won't like that, and they won't listen to that, and they won't buy that, and all the rest of it. So for whatever reason, you hold back on speaking what's most important to you, which means that you never ever get what's most important to you. By the end of this module, you're going to be in a place where speaking your most important truths is going to be second nature to you. Right? And you won't be thinking about it from a marketing perspective, or whether it sounds silly, or whether people appreciate it, or whether they want to hear it, or any of that stuff. You'll be speaking it because it's the only thing you can speak, because everything else just feels wrong. Okay, it doesn't sit with you in the right way. Okay, so let's make this message a really, really important one, so much so that you can't shut the hell up about it. And hopefully that's another observation you'll probably make about me. I'm always talking about this stuff. There's not really anything else I do talk about. If you look to the hundreds or maybe even thousands of messages that are on Facebook and on blogs and posts and the podcasts and everything else that I've done over the years, I'm only ever talking about the same thing again and again and again. It never gets boring to me. It's the only thing I can think about talking about. And that's really where I want you to get to. You love your message so much that you can't shut the hell up about it. Okay, so let's get to work. So question one, if you were to look back on your life up to this point, what would you say was the theme of it and why? What would you say was the theme? Like, if I look back upon my life up to this point, the theme has really been kind of, I could use lots of different words, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same, but certainly growth, but you could argue that for all of us. Evolution, absolutely. Awakening and enlightenment, and again, these aren't just throwaway words to me. They're really meaningful. I do feel like, certainly over the past 15, 20 years, I feel like I've been really waking up to life, and that that like guru for me isn't just a cool marketing word and a throwaway word. It's like I really do feel like I'm becoming enlightened. Certainly not the Buddha, enlightened as enlightening as opposed to enlightened, right? I really feel like the enlightenment process is really, really occurring in me over the years. I don't know whether that's ego or arrogance or any of that kind of stuff, but that's not the question, right? So if we come back to just answer the fucking question, if I were to answer that question, I go, yeah, that really feels true for me. I feel like I'm on a process of awakening and enlightenment and growth and evolution. That's really what it feels like. Other people might, kind of depend on what life's been like. You might go, but for me, it's like it hasn't really felt like that. It's felt like a struggle. Or for somebody else, it might be about. It's been one about kind of like a performance or challenges or kind of whatever it happens to be. I don't know. I don't want to place too many thoughts into your mind before you answer. Right? I'm always really really careful and really kind of mindful at this point that if I give too many examples, it kind of generally tends to flavor the pot, so to speak. And I don't want to flavor the pot. I really want you to think about this. There is no right or wrong answer here. There's just your answer. So what would you say the theme of your life has been up to this point and why? Number 2, what would you say have been the defining stages of your life? And what was the theme of that particular stage? So like if we could all say, and you can, I invite you to if you wish to, you can say childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, parenthood, and so on and so forth. You can do it that way if you want. Kind of that might be one way in which you define the stages of your life. Certainly, I think of my life as kind of childhood and up to the age of 15. At the age of 15 is when I stabbed my dad through the heart. So life changed for me a lot there, right? So kind of there's that age, and then basically the following year I kind of joined the military. So then there's a military stage, which really kind of defined a lot of my thinking processes and stuff. And then from there was parenthood. Some of that occurred while I was in the military, but then there's a stage of my life that I call parenthood, where my focus kind of shifted. And then there's a stage that I call entrepreneur, right? Actually, I don't call it entrepreneur, I call it personal trainer, right? And then from personal trainer, I became business owner, entrepreneur. And then from there, like moving into what I now deem to be coach, right? And or I say coach, but what I now deem to be guru. So there's different processes. So what have been the defining stages of your life? And what was the theme of each stage? So the theme of my childhood was actual one of I would call it better, right? Well, there's two aspects. If you want to look at it from the negative, like I'd call it not enoughness, but the striving was always kind of better. Like always had to get better food, always had to be better than we were. Even kind of my father was a violent alcoholic. He wasn't the nicest man. Like nothing we ever did was good enough, so everything had to be better. How we tidied our rooms, how we did our homework, like everything had to be better. The next stage of my life, like when I went into the military was about better too, but it was kind of, I would define that as excellence, it wasn't better for better's sake, it was better with purpose, right? It was about surpassing and going beyond, and it was about peak performance and all of that kind of stuff. So different stages of my life had subtly different themes. But actually, as I look back now upon my life, kind of there was this growing theme of things have to be better. And okay, better because someone else told you. Now it's better by choice. And then the next stage was about kind of growth. Particularly as a business, well, both as a parent and then as a business owner, it was about the sharp growth, right? I was 18 when my first child came along. I had to grow as a human being, but I also had to grow as a provider to my family. So there was growth, and then I would say that there was evolution, and then there's awakening, and like you can see. Like I can see retrospectively, and they always say that hindsight is 20/20. I can see retrospectively how I was always being guided toward this point. But there were some kind of pretty challenging life lessons along the way, as is true for all of us, right? So there's no mini violins being played here, and it's important not to get caught up in the drama of this and just look at the data, like look back on it and go, okay, what was it? So you're not being invited to kind of go back into your deepest, darkest, most haunted past and kind of try and psychoanalyze why it happened. Just you're being asked the question. Where again, just answer the fucking question. What was the defining stage, and what was the theme of that stage? And are there recurring struggles and problems and challenges and themes and plots? And if so, what were they? Right? You see struggles come up again and again. Like, what were those struggles? How did they arise? Right? Kind of early parts of my life were struggles with money for sure. As childhood And then even as a soldier, I had more regular money. Kind of as a soldier, I wasn't paid very much, and money was a big thing on my mind. But then there were challenges with what I would call leadership challenges for a big chunk of my life. Right from the moment I became a soldier, through the different regiments and different stuff that I did, all the way through to being a parent, and then being a business operator, and being a trainer and all that kind of stuff. I was playing what I would call a leadership challenge game, and I was always trying to be the front of the pack. And I got there, I was very, very successful. I got to the front of the pack, but I realized that actually by positioning myself as a leader, I put myself in this exhausting game where I'm always trying to either catch up to the people ahead of me or stay ahead of the people behind me. I wasn't playing my own life game. I was playing a game that was very reactive to the situations and circumstances around me, even though by many standards I was winning, right? So kind of what were your recurring struggles? What was coming up? What did you learn from the struggles? And both the light and the dark. Like you might have, on the one hand, you might have learned kind of how to be tenacious and all the rest of it. But the dark side is the dark side of some of my struggles is that I started to put results and performance ahead of everything else. Right? As long as I got the result I wanted, I didn't really care how I got it. And sometimes, I'm ashamed to say, I'm not ashamed, but kind of it's just makes me a little bit sad. But at times along the way, like it didn't really matter like who got hurt in the process. I didn't deliberately set out to hurt anyone. But certainly, if it came down to me getting what I wanted and somebody else not, it would be me, right? I'd elbow and nudge my way to the front. It's like I'm going to get what I want. So there are dark side learnings as well. That actually there's a when I play that game, there's a tendency in me to become that. So what did you learn from your particular struggles? Next, have there been recurring challenges? So there was challenges, but this is about challenges that have shown up in your life, bringing confrontation, conflict, chaos, and challenge, right? So the challenger might be specific people. It might be your parents or siblings or any of that kind of stuff, or a partner. So it might be a recurring challenger as a specific person, but it might be a recurring type of challenger, like the type of person that has consistently shown up in my life. So I realized for me, the recurring challenger has been an instructor type, or someone who was telling me I had to do things in a certain way, usually without so much the guidance, but more trying to get me to do stuff with authority. What I've realized over my life is that I'm actually quite a rebel. I don't like being told what to do. I love being guided, and I love being enlightened, and I love people shining light on my stuff, but I absolutely abhor being told what to do, kind of specific, like do this, do this, do this, do this. And again, that will show up in my style as a guru, right? Like you'll see that, like whilst I'm really comfortable laying down systems and questions and principles and all the rest of it, I'm very loath to actually say, so step 1, do this, step 2, do that, step 3, do that, and build your business this way, right? And again, that's that distinction that I now make between being a mentor and a coach, right? A mentor is, I got there this way, so you should go there this way too. And a coach is, okay, I know some of the ways to get there, let's figure out which one you want to take. So have there been, it might be the recurring challenger might be an actual person or people, but it might be a type of person. And for me, it was an instructor, mentor type, kind of in the way that I describe a mentor. People not so much giving me guidance, but giving me instructions and commands and stuff, which is interesting considering I became the military. But I joined the military. But actually, retrospectively looking back, I joined the military because there were things that I wanted from the military that I valued more than the inconvenience and discomfort of being involved in being ordered around and told what to do, right? So I wanted to be able to travel the world and jump out of planes and blow things up and all the rest of it. And to me, the other stuff was just a very small price at the time. Okay. So, and what did you learn? What was the dark side that you learned? What's the light side that you learned from that? From the challengers, right? So the light side is I learned, oh, right, well, there is another way to get there, and you don't actually have to be an instructor or take instruction. You, particularly in unskillful ways or ways that feel like they undermine you, you can get to the same place faster, easier, and better by doing it in a more guide on the side kind of way. But plus, the dark side is that kind of I recognize that very often I've turned down guidance from people who could have got me there earlier. Because by basically in a bloody minded kind of way, but also that I've had a tendency also to judge people doing that. I've judged them negatively, right? And kind of sometimes sometimes kind of thought of them as like bad people for trying to make me do stuff, versus no, they're just offering me a way, and that way includes instruction. So there's light and dark learnings that I've learned from that too. What would you consider to be your biggest successes in life so far, and why? Okay, that's self-explanatory. What would they be, and why? And what would you consider to be your biggest failures in life, and why? Okay. How have you grown from life's journey so far? Like, how have you grown or evolved, or and by grown, like we're talking about it from what you could say a positive sense now, right? How have you grown? What has life's journey made you into now that you weren't when you first set out? And kind of, if you want that to be from adolescence or from early adulthood or whatever, but how have you grown? Be specific about it. All right, kind of be really, really specific about it. I know all the ways in which I've grown. I'm a much more well-rounded person. I'm certainly more intellectual, but I'm also far more heartfelt than I've ever been. I'm far more compassionate than I've ever been, because I've been through some crazy shit in my life. So my compassion for other people is through the roof now. I wouldn't say I'm non-judgmental, because I don't believe anyone is non-judgmental, but I believe I'm more discerning than judgmental, and that I come back from being judgmental extremely quickly. So there's lots and lots of ways that I could describe how I've grown. How have you grown? How has life's journey grown you in positive ways? And what would you have to have known, believed, or been taught in order to have arrived at that same growth easier and faster? Now look, I know there's that one thing, we could all sit here and say, well, I would never have gotten here if it wasn't for the struggles. And you know what? That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Like, you wouldn't have become the person you are right now. But I'd like you to kind of play the game. Play the game. Like, imagine that somebody could have shortcut this. Like, you wouldn't have to have suffered as much, and you wouldn't have had to have struggled as much, and it wouldn't have had to have taken so longer. If you could shortcut that for yourself, what would you have had to have believed or been taught in order to have arrived here at the same place you are right now, easier and faster? And again, be really, really explicit. Be really, really explicit. I can give you a very, very simple, not so secret about what I would have had to have known, believed, and been taught. Is that I didn't have to be more than I am. I just have to be all that I am. That's what I would have had to have been taught. Now, I didn't come to that language straight away. I had 6 or 7 different variations of that same message. But as I've kind of evolved it, I realized that the answer was there all along. I know if somebody had said to me, you need to do this, you need to stop that, you need to have this, and you need to stop doing this, and you need to, really, in essence, what they would have said to me is that I didn't have to be any more than I am. I didn't have to go and educate yourself by all means, Dax, do more courses, get more education, learn more things, but it's not going to be that makes you the happy, successful, and free person that you really, really dream of becoming. It's going to be showing up in life as fully and completely as you possibly can. That's what I would have really had to have been told. My earlier iterations of that were, one that I borrowed from Conversation with God was to show up in life as the greatest and greatest version of the grandest vision I ever held of who I could be. Earlier versions of that were more to do with performance, be all that you are, be all you can be. There's lots and lots of different iterations. And I'm not asking you to come up with a polished version of this. I'm asking you to, I don't exactly know how I would have said it, but I would have needed to roughly have been told these things. Create a little list of things that you really believe you'd have had to have known, you'd have had to have believed, or you'd have had to have been taught in order to arrive to where you are right now, but easier and faster than you got here. Okay? And that's it. That's this first mission. So a little bit of a longer kind of training in this one today, but only because I've been introducing both the module and the mission itself, right? So you know what to do. If you've got any questions, fire them away. Quick and early, don't suffer and struggle. Certainly allow yourself to be challenged by the answers, but don't struggle with them too much, right? And if you need any help, you know where I am. If not, get to it. Take care.